Hi, everybody. Welcome to the term of the week. This is Lillian Rocha,
This is Mike Merriquin.
and today we're going to talk about respondent conditioning.
And respondent conditioning is something that you might have heard and used in a couple of different names. You might have also known it as Pavlovian conditioning, classical conditioning, respondent conditioning. It's all the same thing. Cooper, Herod, and Heward, they describe classical conditioning or respondent conditioning as a stimulus-stimulus pairing procedure in which a neutral stimulus is presented with an unconditioned stimulus until the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus that elicits the conditioned response.
Geez, this is a mouthful. Let's highlight some terms.
So some of the key terms that we need to know when we're looking into respondent conditioning is the stimulus-stimulus pairing, a neutral stimulus, unconditioned stimulus, conditioned stimulus, and conditioned response. And we'll go through each of these terms individually so that you can have a better understanding of them.
All right. So first, let's start talking about stimulus-stimulus pairing. So like the term says, it's a procedure. So by being a procedure, what it means, what you need to remember here is that by putting two stimuli together, you create a relationship. So one stimuli can precede the other, they can be presented together. Whichever relationship you create, that's what we mean by stimulus-stimulus pairing.
Mm-hmm. And a neutral stimulus is a stimulus that on its own doesn't typically produce a response. So that could be, think of all the number of stimuli that we encounter in a day. That could be the sound of an airplane in the distance, or a fire truck somewhere, or an ambulance, or even the sound of a bird outside, or crickets. It's not a stimulus that typically produces a response, but they're there in the environment. An unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that we're born able to respond to, usually things like food or warmth or cold, things like that. We're hardwired to respond to our environment, mainly for our survival.
So now you put this neutral stimulus together with this stimulus that produces naturally, unconditionally produces salivating orienting response. And there you go. What do you get?
You get an association between the neutral stimulus, which now we can call a conditioned stimulus, and the unconditioned stimulus. And the association generally revolves around prediction. When I hear that song, that means there's ice cream available. When I hear that song, that means that ice cream is available. The child hears the music, the child gets the ice cream, the child hears, and that's how the ice cream truck works. By playing that sound around the neighborhood, they're alerting children to orient towards the window. There's ice cream available. And then you have a bunch of salivating children around the house.
Or adults.
Or adults. I noticed when I played this song, you immediately stopped talking.
I go. And the funny thing is that I knew that you were going to play the song, and still, I couldn't help the orienting response. For a minute, I had to say, okay, this is just Mike.
Mm-hmm. Now, in that example, there was no actual ice cream. So it's not responding to the unconditioned stimulus. What we just saw there was a response to the unconditioned stimulus. So for Lily, it was orienting. I don't know if you're salivating right now, but I am.
I am. Well, so anyway, so how do we get these two things together to apply in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
So you could pretty much, an orienting response is a prerequisite, for example, for eye contact in a child with autism. Mm-hmm. So you can come up with a neutral sound, a neutral stimulus of a sound that will produce an orienting response, and then pair that with the name of the child, and then you get the child to respond to the name.
Very good. Basically, in application, the conditioned response becomes the antecedent for other operant behaviors. So again, what happens when a child hears the ice cream truck song? They might be jumping up and down. They might be running to the window. They might be asking mom for money. And if those operant behaviors are reinforced, then you have an increased probability that those behaviors will occur in the presence of the ice cream truck.
Absolutely. And there's, many other examples in which we use classical condition as a starting point. We just don't really realize that. For example,
So a lot of this I've seen when parents will tell me that a therapist is not liked by a child, or they don't have a good relationship. I'll hear stuff like that. When a therapist comes to the home for the first time working with a student, and the first thing they do is they sit down, they go to the therapy room, or they go to the table, and they start working immediately, the child develops an association between that therapist and work, or between the table that they always sit down and do work at and work. Then what you might get is avoidance responding, where the therapist walks into the house and the child will start to cry, or the therapist brings the child over to the place where they normally get work done, and the child starts to cry. So that shows you a common example of classical conditioning gone wrong, where things can go better is if you can use that principle to your advantage. So if you walk into the house and immediately hand the student a reinforcer, or have a couple of repetitive stimuli that the student, typically enjoys with you, and the child only has access to those stimuli when you're there, then you become just as important as the ice cream truck. When you pull up, good things are going to happen. So you can create your conditioned reinforcers, and including yourself. We should all be pairing ourselves with reinforcement so that families are happy to see us, children are happy to see us. I really, and it's unfortunate when I hear stories about bad therapists or people that just want to get everything done very quickly, and they forget that there's a child, there's a family involved, and how they feel about you is important.
At the same time, when you use classical conditioning, when you are creating condition reinforcers, what is a token if not something that's been paired with a primary reinforcer, correct?
And I always try to make sure that when I'm handing a student a token, or when even if I'm handing them a primary reinforcer, an edible, that I say something like "good job" or "good working" or "I like how you're looking at me," or those words become paired eventually with reinforcement. So in the future, you don't have to hand over a penny or a token or a Swedish fish every time a student does something well. Good job, thank you, I appreciate that. Those words become reinforcing enough as well.
Absolutely. It's amazing you use Swedish fish. I thought that everybody used M&Ms.
No, M&Ms are only very, very specific. I worked with a student that had a chocolate allergy. He was allergic to something that was in it, and for him, Swedish fish was fantastic.
There you go. So another example in which we see classical conditioning at play is when we talk about PTSD. So when an individual goes through a traumatic experience, everything in the environment that's present during that traumatic experience can be paired with that traumatic experience and can become associated with that traumatic experience, creating conditioned stimulus that will elicit similar responses. Say, for example, let's say that somebody had a traumatic experience in the evening, at night, in the dark, in the bedroom. So then you may see that same individual now displaying problem behavior, quote unquote, meaning they wake up screaming, or they run out of the bedroom screaming, they can't fall asleep because now the bedroom, the darkness, got associated with that traumatic event, and now they became conditional stimuli that will elicit a response.
And I've seen that also more recently. My fiance and I used to fly. When we first started dating, we would fly all over the place. We never had an issue with flying. We'd go on vacations, or had to travel for a conference. And then she went on a trip with her mother, I believe, to Puerto Rico, and there was horrible, horrible turbulence. The plane felt like it was falling out of the sky, she said. And she's upset, she's nervous, she's experiencing this aversive stimulus, and she looks at her mother, who is sitting right next to her, for comfort, and her mother is crying her eyes out and absolutely in tears. At that point forward, she became actually pretty afraid of flying. Where again, it's not necessarily that something bad actually happened, nobody got hurt, but in the presence of this very scary situation, and your mother is really upset, there's no better way to create post-traumatic stress or a phobia.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. All right, guys, I hope you have enjoyed today's session. There you go again. Go get some ice cream. If you want to get in touch with us, just use our emails. Our emails are on the screen. Please make sure to leave a comment. If you like this, please share. Use social media to share this. Sign up for the newsletter, subscribe for the blog, and most importantly, stay in touch.
And if you have a term that's bothering you, something that you keep getting stuck on, and you'd like us to talk about it, please let us know in the comments, and we'll be sure to make a video on that in the future. Thank you very much.
Oh, by the way, we had a couple of people sign up for to reserve a spot for the live class. There are still a few spots available, so if you're interested, below this video, you will find a link to the form. So make sure to sign up and reserve your spot.
Another idea that we were talking about that I'm not sure how people would respond to it. One thing that I'd like to set up on one of my websites is a bullshit session. So that means I'd like a room full of behavior analysts, people that are working on their board certification, let's say their coursework or their supervision. If you'd like to just get a bunch of us in a room and we can talk about things live and talk about what you want to hear about, and I like the idea that you can ask more and more questions. You can say, well, under this circumstance, I can see this, but I don't understand how that works. And that won't be anything that I want to charge for. It's just something that we can get everyone together with and see how it works out. So if you're interested in that, leave a comment and say, I'm interested in the bullshit session.
All right, guys. But we also have another session that's not just a bullshit session. It's more geared towards learning, and it's with a little bit more structured. So in the comment section, when you sign up to reserve your spot, let us know which one you're interested in. All right.
Sounds good.
So thank you so much. See you next time.
Take care.